Welcome to Java with John, MAISA's new webinar that connects Michigan's ISD leaders over a virtual cup of coffee. And I'm your host, John Severson. And today we sit down with Teresa Belote, Superintendent of St. Joe County Intermediate School District, and Kevin Oxley, Superintendent of Jackson County Intermediate School District. So we're excited that you're both here joining us, and thank you for being here. We know you've had this amazing journey, and we're going to just jump right in. We want you to share your educational and professional journey, and how did you get here, and what does your association mean to you? So we're going to start with Teresa first, and welcome. We're glad you're here.
Well, thanks so much, John. It's my pleasure to be here. Anytime I get to hang out with you guys, it's a fun day.
So tell us about your educational journey. We're going to start with you, and just give us some background of how you got here today, and what does it mean to hold this position, and what does our association mean to you, as an example of a conversation we could have with you today.
Well, many, many, many years ago, I started as a teacher of students with emotional impairments. So that's how I started. Actually, in college, I was in pre-med and had an opportunity to do some volunteer work with some students with IEPs, and went, I'm on the wrong career path. So at that point, I recognized I loved working with kids, made a switch, and became a teacher of students with IEPs. So I did that for most of the first 10 years of my career. Came to the ISD, the same ISD I'm sitting in right now, worked here for a year as a teacher consultant, and realized with a pit in my stomach, I didn't get to work with kids anymore. I mean, the adults were lovely, but it was only 10 years of my career, and it was working with adults. So they were lovely, and I had a friend call and say, there's going to be a principal opening in Sturgis, you should apply. And I said, do I get to work with children? They said, yes, every day, whether you like it or not. I said, I'm sold. So the next 10 years, I was one, then two buildings under me as a building principal. So I got near the end of that 10 years and realized legislators were making decisions that impacted my kids with good intentions and unintended consequences. And I thought, who gets invited to that table? Because I wasn't getting invited to that table as an elementary principal. Realized superintendents were, which is really what led me to become a superintendent. Apparently, I always still wanted to be a doctor, because at the same time, I completed my doctorate at Michigan State. And so if anybody says that it's too hard, they can't do it their first year, try doing it while you're finishing your thesis. It's very exciting. It was a great opportunity. I was a local for 3 years as superintendent. Another friend called and said, hey, the ISD needs a superintendent. You should apply. I assured them I had a day job. And they said, but a lot of people poured into you when you were growing up as a professional, and this is an opportunity to give back. And that resonated with me in a different way. And that became more than just a job. And so I applied, and I've been here for 9 years.
Wow, that's amazing. And I remember when I started this position, you had a pretty large staff shortage there, and I was just so impressed and how you jumped in, and you were the boots on the ground at your ISD, and I could tell right from the very beginning, you walked the walk. You had this passion to ensure all your kids were successful, and I think as you started with the conversation about wanting to be more connected, you did that year. I remember you were incredibly busy, right?
And I subbed one day a week, every week from August to December to keep one of our programs open. We all leaned in. That was during COVID.
And I think for our listener, to say it's about kids, you actually modeled that in the work. And I think that's something I always carry away from my working relationship with you, and honoring you. So we're going to pivot. And Kevin, I don't know how you top that. It's kind of a great background, but what can you tell us about your experience? I know you've had some amazing experiences to get to this position today. Share with us, would you please?
Yeah, I never would have guessed that I'd have 17 years as a intermediate school district superintendent under my belt. But much like Teresa, I started in the classroom. I was a high school social studies teacher, coach, and moved into administration and was an assistant principal and a principal at the high school. Just always really enjoyed working with kids and working with people. That's the great thing about education, right? I mean, it's you can talk about the nuts and bolts and curriculum standards and all of that, but at the end of the day, every day you get to come to work and work with people, and that means it's never boring, it's never mundane, and and you meet great people like Teresa, like yourself, and so. I've been at the Jackson County Intermediate School District for 17 years. I spent 2 as a career and technical education director for the Career Center, and then moved into the superintendency. And it's just, it's been a wonderful journey. I look back over my tenure. It started with the Great Recession in 2009, where there was no money in the bank and things looked pretty bleak. And we went through COVID, and again, who's so lucky to go through such huge historical events and work with people all the way through it. So it's been a great journey.
Yeah, and Kevin, my connections with you, I always feel you're such a good listener and you're very patient. You've gone through some very difficult times, so you kind of read into things about being foundationally sound and steady, and taking that information. And I think for our membership, you've provided that ability to be a very good listener and to not get too caught up into things, right? Let's really take the facts, let's really line it up. And both of you have this, what I love about our association, everybody has something that they bring to the table, and our Better Together is always about how do we pull those pieces so we have this superintendent, right, who has so many ways to support the role. And you both have different backgrounds, which is a strength, because a lot of our problems are so complex. You're bringing a lot of perspective. So I know from our membership, that's so appreciative. We appreciate that. So we're gonna now, you've had this time and long experience, and I want you to look back now, and we're gonna start with Kevin. And Kevin, look back in your career, and what have you been the most proudest of your time? And it could be in this role, could be in any role, but it'd be great to hear, what did you feel you really made the greatest difference in the work that you do?
John, I think the thing I'm most proud of is I didn't do anything alone. It's always been, a group of people that you get to work with, and you get these diverse ideas, and it comes together, to form something that it creates, a little bit of continuity and stability in a world that sometimes doesn't feel like there is a lot of continuity and stability. And so, I've just had wonderful superintendents that I've had a chance to get to know and work with over 17 years, board members that really came together. And that's not to say we always got, completely aligned with what we thought should happen, but the process of getting to a place where everybody could stand on solid ground and say, let's do this together, that's the fun of the job. And it's the challenge of the job that I'm most proud of, having been able to be a part of.
So it's establishing that culture of everybody having a voice, everybody being part of the work. That's what I'm hearing really standing out. That's helped you be making a significant positive difference for so many, right? That it took a lot of people to be together on those tough issues and topics. Wouldn't you say that's probably a culture that you developed with your team and the people you work around?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the nature of the work of an intermediate school district. You don't have authority over anybody. You have some resource that you can share, And the idea is to, make everybody swim in the same direction. I remember in my interview for this job, I used a video of Nemo, and when Nemo got all the little fish to swim in the right direction. And, that's what we do every day. We try to get everybody to swim in the same direction. And when you do that, great things can happen. And when you can't get everybody moving in the same direction, the challenge is to get everybody swimming in that direction.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Teresa, what are you most proudest of in your
Oh
work?
my gosh. I hate having to follow Kevin on that answer because it was brilliant. And so it's so true. I mean, we have the pleasure and the honor of being in service organizations. I mean, that is our sole purpose, is to serve and support in the advancement to make sure that we're building better futures for children, for communities. That's our job. And I don't think there's ever an I completely agree with Kevin. It's we. And if you can get everyone on the same page, um, and and understanding we're not going to agree. You ask what probably one of my favorite things that we were ever able to do collectively. We were able to pass the CTE millage, the first one in St. Joe County. And that was a big deal because it provided great opportunities for our kids. But we did a listening tour for a year, gathered a lot of input, talked to a lot of stakeholders, and then put together a plan that we felt like had a common voice. And I think that was it was very gratifying to be able to weave that together, to have something that could be, everyone could live with. And then God bless them, I went to the head of our Republican and the head of our Democratic parties in St. Joe County at the time. And I said, I'd really like you to do an ad with me for CTE. Something like, we don't agree on much, but we do agree career technical education is good for everyone. And I was so impressed with both of them because they both said, well, I would do it, but that person won't do it. And they both said yes. And I said, oh, well, they said they would do it if you would do it. And pretty soon we had us all in a radio station. And it was such a beautiful thing because despite their differences, when you get people face to face having a human conversation, you can start to unpack everything that's the same. And they were able to have some great dialogue outside of that. Ad was beautiful, but they had great dialogue around it. And I thought that's the beauty of the honor we get to serve in this position, is we can bring people together to have hard conversations and recognize together we solve problems. We don't have to be alienated from each other.
I think you both talked about creating a shared vision, right? And we all had all that coursework on, the importance of creating a shared vision. And you're able to do that by the relationships, bringing people together, finding their common interests, not even worrying about their backgrounds, but focusing on the intersection of what they did and believed together could happen. And a CTE millage is really a big lift in this state. We know that is a significant legacy that you're going to leave behind. That's just an amazing story. I think too is we have a lot of new ISD superintendents, some of them in their first 2 or 3 years. And what advice, Teresa, would you give someone new in that position? What really could help them really accelerate that influence and positive impact across their county and region?
Sure. I'm going to come back to the first question that I didn't do a good job answering this part of, John, and that's anchor yourself to state organizations that can open up a really broad lens for you of brilliant people. Whether I was in special education attending MAIS, whether I was an elementary principal attending MEMSPA, or a superintendent and now an ISD superintendent with MASA and MAISA, those anchors save you in hard times because you now have on speed dial all of these brilliant people and that are so much smarter in certain areas than I am, that I can lean on and say, what's the best way to help solve this problem for my county? What did you do, Kevin, when this happened? For example, right? So I think I would tell anybody new in an ISD superintendency seat or any seat, anchor yourself to places where you get the information so you're not caught behind the 8 ball wondering how did I miss that information? You need to make sure you're on the edge of the newest information and you're as aware of the changes as you can be. State organizations provide a big opportunity to get that information in a real-time fashion.
Well, I think that's great advice for a new superintendent. And even if you weren't part of MEPSPA, you could still go to those events and connect with elementary principals and leaders who are talking about, for example, literacy and leadership of principals in that space. And I find when I go to association events, I try to make another connection. Every time I go, even this far in my career, I try to meet some new people. I try to look at some of the things that they lift. And I think you said this very well. It makes you much better, right, as a leader, because you've had those experiences. And Teresa, maybe a link to that. You talked about your early time in special education, and here you are helping to build a CTE program, something that was very different in your field. So you had to have some really strong connections to do that, right? Wouldn't you say that made a difference?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nobody tells you when you're in classes to be an administrator, nobody says, hey, when you pass a sinking fund or a bond, you're going to spend a significant amount of time talking to contractors and planning out site spaces and becoming really knowledgeable about what that takes to keep operations going at a very hands-on level. That was not my skill set. That wasn't where I came from. I'm pretty good at it now.
Yeah.
I reached out to a lot of really good people at the time. So
Yeah.
The other thing I would say to new administrators is also make sure you're creating space for your team to go and sharpen their own skills and network, because it's equally important that your whole team has that investment in pouring into them in whatever their organizations are.
Building the team.
Mm-hmm.
Great examples. Kevin, what could you add perspective in this area for new?
Well, to answer Teresa's question, what would you do, Kevin? I called Teresa. So that, but Teresa's right. The ability to network and to just get to know people, and if for new ISD superintendents coming in, while it's certainly, I agree, it's important to connect to your state organizations, really get to know your locals too. If you're coming in to the county and you didn't come from there, you need to move around and really understand the culture of the county and the school districts in your county. We have 12 school districts in Jackson County, and each of them, Jackson County has a culture, and then each of those 12 have a culture. And you really need to understand that and realize if you're going to bring all of those people together and move them in the same direction, you better understand what they're dealing with individually in their own school districts. And really get to know those superintendents, really get to know the board members in those various districts in your county, because you're in service to them. You're trying to help them. You need to understand what their problems are.
Well, that's a good pivot question. And I have found in that role, you're trying to define your impact and what you've done together, and how sometimes it's not visible, right? And so if you have a county of 6 districts, 12, 20, 30, it can be very difficult in this position to sometimes show the impact. And I know that one example is showcasing that impact through an LEA and that relationship with them. Kevin, just to hang in there for a second, what would you say you've been able to do in that relationship to show impact with a local district? Have you had success in doing that? And what does that look like when you can show and define that impact by working with others?
Yeah, I call it kind of rounding the edges. And a lot of times you have a square peg that has to fit into that round hole. And there's a lot of work behind the scenes to round those edges and, create that solid spot where everybody can land. Remembering back, creating a common calendar for 12 school districts was, we got everybody there, but it took a long time. And, all the superintendents went on tours together to forums in every school district, some of them filled with people with different opinions and, holding that all together and just keeping people behind the scenes saying, let's keep our eyes on the prize. We might not get exactly what we want out of this. But if we listen to everybody, I think we have good rationale to move in this direction. And, we were able to do that. I remember a special education millage where, this was going to hike rates for everybody in the county, and we had to get everybody on board. My first year, we had everybody was calling me James Bond because we had a .007 fund balance in the special ed fund, and that had to come up. And we got everybody to pass it, and we've passed 3 since. So, it's just that behind the scenes stuff and helping people understand and listening and getting people to move in the right direction.
Teresa, what could you add about that work? What
Well,
could you add
now I just am wishing that through my career as an ISD soup, I'd known that story, because I would have been calling Kevin James Bond my entire career. I'm really disappointed about that. Opportunity missed right there. No, Kevin he's so masterful at this, and I so appreciate listening to what he's saying, because it really strikes true. Is you have to be able to have those hard conversations, assume positive intentions, and say, okay, let's be frank. We all know we're fighting over kids. School of choice is real, and there are winners and losers in that, right? So you have to acknowledge that there are places where we bump. We spent a year at multiple meetings really talking about what can we agree on. I said, I don't care what we land at the end of the day, but all of you have to have a voice in what we think is appropriate and not appropriate in advertising for school of choice. What's going to support our own districts without tearing down other districts? Because at the end of the day, once that breaks, it's hard to repair. And we're able to do a lot for kids because we leverage our collective strength. So let's be authentic at this table, even with hard conversations. And at the end of the day, be able to talk that through. And we have a beautiful document we review every year now and say, is this okay? Is this not okay? And then we've had people call each other and go, hey, I just found out my bus goes into your district. I didn't know it, but this is what we're going to do. They work it out. It's very collaborative, and it's really helped us to be able to continue to work together. And I say that with great respect for my 9 local superintendents and the authenticity they bring to the table. They're just amazing people. And when you have that opportunity, my job is to help leverage their greatness and keep reminding them it's better together.
Beautiful. I want you to, the last question. So I'm going to stay with you, Teresa, for a second. So give us your guiding principle or a reminder that you'd want to leave as you leave and sail into the sunset, as they say, that you would like to leave with ISD leaders across the state, or any leader. What is a guiding principle or reminder or word that really stands out that shows your passion and focus on making a difference for kids?
Sure. I would say to be able to sleep at night, these jobs are big, right? So to be able to sleep at night, you have to make sure you always keep kids and what you believe is the potential impact of any decision you make on children in the moment and in the future. So I gather a lot of information before I make decisions, because I want to make sure I'm making informed decisions. I'm not going to make everyone happy. Sometimes I make almost no one happy with a decision, let's be candid. But I try to articulate my why, because if I can keep kids first and make sure every decision I make is what I believe is best for our kids and our community, I can sleep at night. and believe that it was a life well lived.
Well said, Kevin. What can you say to that question?
Teresa just nailed it, right? These are people jobs. It's about the relationships, and whatever you do, realize that those are people with feelings and passions, and sometimes they're on the other side of the coin in terms of where you want them to be. But you have to honor that, and you have to realize that, there's not many people out there really looking to do bad. So try to understand why you don't agree with people, and then see where the common ground is. And it's what makes the job different every day and exciting every day. And the other thing I would tell anybody who's new to the position is, find those rocks. Find those rocks that you can always count on, because superintendency can be kind of lonely at times. For me, it was, my wife was always there just to listen, and to redirect me sometimes when I needed it. And then I had great predecessors, John Graves, John Darczynski, Joe Koziel, just people that I really, really respected, and, tried to learn from them and tried to do as they did. So it's been a great journey.
Yeah, phone a friend kind of thing, right?
Phone
Where
a
you
friend.
can
Yes.
phone a friend, and hearing both of you speak, the relationships and networking, the going to places with different groups and learning, building trust, shared vision, all the things we've learned through all those courses we had over the years. And I really believe so much of what we do is the relationship and the experience that we have, and being willing to ask for help, being willing to call someone and say, hey, have you been down this road before? And I really believe ISD superintendents do that really well. They are very humble and recognize that you don't have all the answers to complex problems. So we're going to, Kevin and Teresa, we're going to miss you guys. We thank you so much for all that you've done for Michigan, the work you've done in St. Joe, Jackson County, those legacies that you leave will be incredibly fortunate for the kids that you've impacted, and also the leaders you've impacted. You've lifted many on your shoulders. So we thank you, and thank you for today. And just want to say to all of our guests, if you have any questions, an idea for a topic, or you like to be a guest, email me at javawithjohn@gomaisa.org. And don't forget, visit gomaisa.org to explore our resources, and stay tuned. So amazing guests. Thank you so much again. And until next time, keep leading and serving with vision and passion. And remember, we are better together.
Thank you.
Thank you.